everyone, and welcome to Parks Associates webinar today, focused on Beyond Speed, the new era of context-driven connectivity, where we're talking about the next relationship and offerings from internet service providers and what you can see from broadband, and really changing how you think about differentiation, and as consumers grow sort of less impressed with raw speed and more attuned to smarter, more context-driven interactions. So I'm very excited to be hosting this conversation today in partnership with Adeia. I'm Jennifer Kent, Vice President of Research with Parks Associates. And thank you to Adeia for your support. We couldn't put on this conversation without your partnership, so very pleased to be bringing this conversation today together. We are going to be talking about several key issues and really thinking about the future and the evolution of broadband and the networking experience at home and that relationship with the consumer, really reframing the value of connectivity. We're going to be talking a little bit about what really drives consumer satisfaction and the relationship with internet service providers, and how consumers think about deciding who to go with, and how you, again, kind of differentiate where's the real value with connectivity. Where's the innovation at the edge today, and especially around intelligence and context? There's so much more that we can know and manage and do so intelligently, and how does that change internet service provider strategy? We have a variety of fantastic experts from really around the ecosystem with a variety of perspectives to share, which I love. I'm going to introduce them and ask them really to introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about themselves and about the organizations. Anju with Amplifier, I'd love to start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization.
Sure. I'm Anju Ahuja. I'm with Amplifier. I lead strategy and operations there. Previously, I was with Cable Labs. I know DJ actually through his time at Charter. So thank you all for having me here today. At Amplifier, we're fundamentally re-architecting strategy and innovation. We've developed proprietary AI that compresses what used to take literally months of work and analysis down to mere minutes. And while faster and more objective are huge advantages, I think the real breakthrough in our software is our ability to dramatically expand the innovation possibility space. And we've been working with a number of companies to test that over time. So we're really excited. I mean, what I can say personally is I've spent a lot of time in innovation, and over the years, I've worked with a lot of different legacy methodologies and strategy consultants, and I really wish I had had this back then. I think I would have gotten even more done. But if anyone is interested in learning more, feel free to look me up on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to tell you more. Thank you again for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being here, for participating. Your great experience and working with internet service providers, of course, and then also having your eyes firmly in innovation. And I know we'll be talking about AI today. James, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. My name is James Baber. I spent 15 years in telecommunications across Comcast and Charter, building out some of the largest Wi-Fi networks and MVNOs in the United States. I tried my hardest to get away from telecommunications and got into artificial intelligence. I'd been doing machine learning for about 6 years in telecommunications, and then kind of pulled away and dove quite deep into artificial intelligence, spanning the gamut across NLP, sentiment analysis, transcription, translation, you name it. And I've been pulled back into telecommunications by Dan Herskovich, Plume's new CEO, that we started Xfinity Wi-Fi several years ago. We were younger back then. This is an opportunity for me really to bring that AI and ML expertise back into the products at Plume. So I'm one of the 2 leaders at Plume, and we're here to, as I mentioned, bring in AI and ML and those capabilities into driving our features to ISPs. So Plume, for those who don't know, service ISPs, 400 globally, serving them across primarily Wi-Fi services, and then device and application intelligence. And I look forward to talking about more of those capabilities here soon. Thank you very much.
Okay, fantastic. Very excited to have you here, and also to hear what Plume's working on, what you're working on there at Plume. A lot of innovation happening there. And also we have DJ from Adeia. Thank you so much for, again, partnering with us to host this webinar. I'd love to hear more about yourself and give you a little time to tell us more about Adeia and where you fit in the market.
Hey guys, I'm DJ. I work with Adeia, as Jennifer, you already mentioned, about a decade of experience with service providers. Had the good fortune to work with Anju while she was at Cable Labs. Have also worked with Dan Herscovici back in the day in the smart home product when Time Warner Cable and Charter used to work, Time Warner Cable and Comcast used to work together, and several other ISPs. Also have the opportunity to be leading some emerging technology, more edge computing type initiatives, R&D stuff at Charter Communications. And so for the last 4 years, I've been with Adeia. Adeia is really about advanced R&D. We have, yes, this is an introduction slide to Adeia. We do about somewhere between 375 to 400 million annual revenue. We have about 13,000 plus patent assets. We do a lot of our development organically. We also do strategic acquisitions of patent portfolios. We have 115 plus customers and counting, and we have evolved to this position across several decades of innovation. Our business is basically divided into really 2 big verticals, one of which is media. I'm in that media department, and the other of which is semiconductor, where we look at several semiconductor innovations. Talking about the media side, here's just a graphic of various different things that we've conducted R&D on, all of which you should be familiar with. Moving on to the next slide, I just also wanted to point out that our R&D is very, very nimble. We evolve. We try to shape that relationship with the consumer that they have with respect to media. So in recent years, we've been looking a lot at things that are presented here: AR, VR, metaverse, immersive shopping, shoppable video, also advertising and analytics. So this is just sort of a sample presentation of how we evolve as consumers' relationship with media evolves. Moving on to the next one. This is just a presentation. Like I said, it is a gradual process of evolution, how we got to where we're at. And if you look at the late 1990s, we were working on very different things. Those were early days, I should say, of video transmission. And as we have evolved over a period of time, we have moved more into things like computer vision, conversational user interfaces, and cloud computing. And today, very much actually exploring AI pretty much as a horizontal across all different ways in which it would be applied in media.
Well, thank you so much for being here, DJ. I love this slide because it not only shows the evolution of Adeia, but also really of the industry and thinking about broadband and telecom and in-home, residential networks and automation coming alongside these great innovations. And our job here today is to talk about, okay, what's next? So fantastic. Thanks for joining us and again for partnering on this webinar. So I wanted to frame the conversation with a little bit of Parks research and show what we're seeing in some of our data that really shape where the internet service, broadband market is today and where it's going and kind of needs to go. So if you're working in this market, there's a lot of competitive shakeup that's happening. So we've seen a great rise and uptake of fiber when we talk about access methods, 5G at home. You have households and areas that maybe have choice, more choice in provider than they ever have before, and a lot of changing happening with not only who the service provider is that is serving you, but again these access methods. At the same time, which is putting a lot of kind of competitive crunch on some of the players. And then at the same time, we're actually seeing the speeds continue their kind of slow and steady uptake over time, such that now many households have very, very high speeds and really sufficient speeds for what we're doing at home today, even with all the streaming that's happening, even with all the online gaming that's happening, even with the video webinars and work from home. We've got 22% of households telling us that they now are on a gigabit or higher plan, even if they're not necessarily getting exactly those speeds at all times of the day, depending on their CPE, et cetera, right? They're subscribing into this highest tier plan. So speed is ubiquitous, and everyone in the industry is thinking about how to get beyond just providing the highest speeds. At the same time, kind of adding to this pressure, we do see the decline of what is the traditional home bundle, right? Home internet bundled with pay TV, traditional pay TV, with home phone, with mobile, kind of declining over time. But we know that that bundle and services provided beyond simply broadband to the home is really important, not only for the consumer, but definitely for the industry as well. So for the consumer, consumers tell us increasingly that they are looking at what else comes with internet when they're deciding to switch providers. So you can see 31% in our 2024 wave saying bundles with other services like mobile, like Netflix are important to me. And then also rising awareness and interest in what we consider advanced Wi-Fi features, adaptive Wi-Fi, whole home cybersecurity, parental controls, other types of services and features that make that experience richer. And we're seeing more and more uptake of those types of value-added services over time. Of course, we know it's really critical for the providers themselves because it helps you acquire customers, it helps drive ARPU, it helps drive down churn as well and keep that subscriber longer. And so what types of services are we talking about? Of course, you've got some traditional services. We actually have streaming video, like SVOD type services, now as the #1 service that is bundled with home internet. So the #1 service bundled with home internet is not traditional pay TV anymore. It's not necessarily mobile, though that's rising. It's streaming services. There's also interest in other types of new services. So 61% of security system owners are interested in using sensors that are already in the home or really even baked into the network, plus AI to understand if there's an issue at home or somebody's at home when they shouldn't be, to understand that context. 34% of internet households tell us that they're interested in fall detection and monitoring the activity of an older loved one. So there's a lot more that can be done when you understand the context at home. You're using the great information that we can know often sometimes right from those network signals and the devices attached to the network. Finally, a point that I thought was important to frame here is, when we think about the relationship with internet service provider and getting beyond just speed, we know that in compared to some other types of services to the home, broadband providers don't always have the best satisfaction rates. For NPS, Net Promoter Score, which is one way of measuring consumer loyalty and satisfaction, it hovers around 1. You don't want to be negative like traditional pay TV services at the moment, but 1's not great. You want to be much higher than that. You can see home security services, streaming pay TV, even mobile getting higher rates. And when you look at customers who have more than just internet service, the bare bones basics, which averages out at that 1, and has additional services that they're taking with their internet service, their Net Promoter Score really goes through the roof here. And the more services and the more features that you're taking from your internet service provider, the higher your satisfaction, the higher your Net Promoter Score is. So sort of a two-way angle here. Both you're more open to receiving these types of services from your internet service provider, but also, it does change that relationship of and the richness and the value that you're getting. So those are very impactful. Finally, we did a survey of executives in consumer IoT earlier this year. So the previous slides were all sort of a consumer perspective, but this is from the executive point of view. And we asked, where do you see growth coming from across the connected home landscape? and services starting at the network, Wi-Fi technology being a big place that executives feel like there's growth today, and looking out, you see that AI on the both today and also driving growth in the future. So different things that we'll be talking about with our panelists today. So as we dive into the conversation here, I want to remind you that you have the opportunity to ask questions of the panelists. So there is a questions tab as we get going. If you do have questions about the research or about anything that we're talking about, feel free to put those in the questions tab. We'll try to get to some of those later in the conversation. So love to open it up to the panel here. Andrew, I'd love to start with you. From where you sit and your long experience in the industry and now at Amplifier, what signals to you that the kind of speed era is over for ISPs and we need to be looking perhaps to evolving to something else?
Sure. I mean, from the consumer perspective, speed is sort of an arbitrary fact about the technology that's delivering you your connectivity. It's really not something that tells them what they can do with it. And I think for most users, the utility that they get out of their network is, what are they doing with it? What's the fidelity of that experience on it? What variety of experiences can they have on it? And, can they count on it, right? There's all these other emotional aspects around, can they count on it, that we can dig into. But I think one of the biggest signals our software is also picking up is, if you look at all of the variety of messaging that's out there, especially in competitive markets, while ISPs and telcos have generally moved towards talking about use cases, right? The consumer use cases on the network. I think a lot of them have been trying to aspire towards talking to that relationship with the user, really trying to aspire towards those value-added services that may or may not sit on top of connectivity, but have everything to do with running your household, and your household as your home base for all the experiences that you have. So talking about extraordinary benefits around home security, you were talking about insurance tech as a 2028 interest area. I think there are a number of things that can be done to imbue that relationship with greater value over time. And I don't think it has to be limited to connectivity. But if you don't get the connectivity right, I think it's hard to be in the game of winning that relationship with the consumer. So I think there are lots of signals, and I'm excited to see where we go next, because I think broadband players are in a very unique position. They do deliver some of the most critical experiences that users want and need. And if you're already doing that, hopefully you can find a way to deliver even more value to that user that's already in a relationship with you.
Yeah, just to follow up on the great point there about, you mentioned, consumer expectations of reliability. This is a critical service that underlies really the foundation of our connected lifestyle now. So how do you feel like that sets ISPs up to be a trusted provider for other things, right? So we already are assuming that we have this absolutely critical cannot go down. Does that engender this idea that you can be trusted to provide other services?
So I'm a little reluctant to comment on trust with a broad brush, because I think it is very brand specific. I think a lot of trust is a function of how you maintain that relationship with that particular subscriber, but also the reputation you have in your market. And so if you have trust, and let's face it, there are a lot of entities that we know don't have trust today, right? There are a lot of things you can say about social media. There are a lot of things you can say about other markets that are out there, or other large companies that dominate the mind share of users, but are not considered in the trust camp. Banks are still doing okay. Last I checked, and looking at some of the related research from Pew and some others and yours, ISPs are doing okay on the trust factor. So if that's the case, I think there is an opportunity to do more than just worry about reliability. Think about what else are pain points for your user and what you think you can credibly sell to them, and find ways to make that relationship richer over time. Jennifer, did that answer your question?
No, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more that it definitely depends on execution in your brand and what you're paying attention to. And there is a spread, right, of who's trusted to provide a little bit more. James, I'd love to go to you too for your perspective from a different place in the market from Plume. Do you feel like the era of speed is over, and kind of what signals to you that something's changing in the market right now?
I would be remiss to say that I think bottom 10%, the less than 50 megabits per second, we still service those customers. And so I don't want to say that speed is completely over for everyone. there's still quite a bit of people who need that those capabilities and that speed. But from the upper half, certainly we're at that point. I mean, across my career, I've been waiting for this exact moment when we get to the point where speed is not an issue. And in some regards, we're there. And in the very near future, almost everyone is going to be at that point. It will not be an issue. You mentioned context. I think this is a great question. This is where we're focusing right now. Plume, right, is the innovator. A couple slides earlier, you mentioned Wi-Fi and some value-added services. Plume really came to the market quite a long time ago, building out adaptive Wi-Fi and trying to make the experience in the home to be as best as it could be. And we recognized that we needed to add a little bit more and a little bit more. We're well past that stage, and I can tell you that Wi-Fi, this is not new to anyone here, but Wi-Fi is just expected, and Wi-Fi is the internet. We used to say that it was the drop that came into the home, or the CPE. It's quite a bit more than that. And so, when the expectation from the subscriber is that I just want everything to work, not only that, but I'm going to bring an additional device into the house, one additional device per year per person or more. When you see that ramp and then you see the complexity of the applications that we're using, you're looking at nearly an infinite space of permutations that the ISP has to support whether they want to or not. And that's the reality world. And so our job now is to provide the services, tools, and capabilities to be able to manage the really significant, exponentially growing complexity and do that at a seamless interface to the customer. You might call this an impossible problem, but that's exactly where we sit today, and that's the world that we have to focus on delivering. If I think of context, I'm thinking of the how are you going to connect? The when are you going to connect? Is it going to be during a busy time of the day or not? Busy time in your home or not? The why are you connecting? What applications are you using? Are you attempting to do an important video call with work? Are you trying to do some video streaming for leisure? Or are you gaming? And who in the household gets the highest say? We have to deal with those dynamics in the home as well. And then last, what device are you connected with? That's extraordinarily important. And if you think about Wi-Fi, you could have one IoT device in the home that's actually bringing down the Wi-Fi experience, making Wi-Fi, or what seems to be the connectivity in the home, to be negative or to be below the speeds that you would expect. And that's really a result of the device that you brought in the home. So we really care a lot about the what device. The two I didn't say is who and where, at least at Plume, and I know across the board, we care very much about your privacy. And so we focus a lot on anonymized device and application intelligence. Again, I'm building this up a little bit, but we can talk about that more, and at least how Plume takes that information and tries to drive your experience better.
Yeah, and I think you spoke to this already a little bit, but consumers are redefining their expectations around connectivity. I love what you mentioned, where it used to be, hey, the internet is the drop. Well, no, it's actually Wi-Fi now, and I that resonates so much with me in our survey work. Changes how you have to ask whether or not you have internet at home, and what are home internet services, and do you have Wi-Fi? Like asking these different questions to how they think about their internet service, but they really are asking for more and more and more. And ISPs are, kind of like you mentioned, in somewhat of a impossible task, but have to be planning and investing to make sure that they're supporting it all. DJ, I'd love to come to you, to think about what's interesting about Adeia and how you guys are very focused on R&D, all these patents that you have, the great innovation timeline that you showed earlier. You're often very ahead of where the market is. So the market's here, you're like looking 10 years down the road. When you think about reframing connectivity value, maybe you can speak to how you see this evolving, this big evolution that's happening for ISPs.
Yes. So I'm going to use this slide. I'm also going to give this a little bit more technological bent here. So appreciate what Anju said and what James said, I think extremely relevant to the conversation around reframing connectivity value. But then let's just take a slightly different tack at this, which is around network errors. I would like to attribute Cable Labs for building this S-curve network errors model. I really love this, which is why I'm using this. I love this because the S-curves actually indicate how basically there's renewal and entirely new suites of technologies that are required to enable new eras, literally, of the network. Like, I mean, of course, in a Cable Lab centric world, we've talked about DOCSIS, but you can look at this as fiber as well. But essentially, the speed era, which was the first S curve. But now where we're at is this experience era. Now that speeds matter a little bit less, it's more about what other, we can call it value added services that come for higher ARPU, or we can call them something else, like little add-ons that improve and redefine the customer's expectation around their quality of experience, right? It may be as simple things like, what happens in the case of an outage. It may be things that James has already talked about. If I carry my device out, if there's a different network, how do I get service on that network, so on and so forth. So, to just kind of frame this, that's what leads to that differentiation, that stickiness that helps customers stay with their current service providers. The trends that I would point to, two things. First of course, the consumer trends that we all know. We're all shifting towards IP media consumption. Certainly, the mind share of long form media has gone down, and the mind share of short form media, TikTok and such, but also gaming, which is a very, very active, requires an entirely different quality of experience framing, has gone up. And all of this is redefining the expectations around the QoE. But then there are also things that are happening on the operator side, because the operators now want to compete for a greater portion of your total telecommunication, media, and entertainment bill. They want to bundle it. They've always wanted to bundle services, but now more and more, even their ownership of different networks, like the fixed network that provides broadband into your home, the mobile network that you take with you wherever you go. So it's all of these things that have to be balanced against each other in order to yield what to a experience era, I would say.
Right, and I love your point on the SVODs too, that you use the word renewal. It is a renewal cycle, right? And you kind of start over and you ramp up and then you start the foundations of something new. So I see that in the chart, we've got the now, and then phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Help us understand, like, where do we get to in phase 1, kind of timing wise, as far as years out? Where do you think we're still right at the fiber transition and optionality and just entering the experience era, or are you starting to see some of the adaptive as well?
I think we're just entering the experience era. I mean, depending on adoption can be seen because I'm more in R&D. I would argue I am fighting for adoption of IETF standards, for example. But once those things become, let's say, commonplace, then those are adopted into products. Those are adopted into consumers' expectations. So I think we're kind of right at the beginning of all of this. So we'll see more and more of this. And that will, I think, help define exactly how this experience era will play out. I mean, we could talk about things like digital network twins, but that'd be a little too far out. I think in the first step, managing through speed, latency, jitter, as well as through the seamless connectivity. That's the theme, right? The seamless connectivity will be the most important. Removing inconvenience for the customer will be the most important thing. And I should also say, countries like the US, large landscapes, extremely challenging to build out large networks in. A lot easier in some other places, but certainly not the US. So, but We do lead in telecoms, so hopefully we can keep that leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. And James mentioned too, a lot of his clients, right? Helping them get to follow up on this curve and get into some of the more advanced, services and technologies that may be missing in those areas. So let's talk about kind of innovation at the edge and context more specifically. James, I'd love to come back to you here to talk about specifically in the broadband experience. What do we mean when we're talking about context? What can be known? Why do we want to know it, right? What does it do for the operator to have more context of what's happening at the edge in the home?
Sure. If I haven't said enough, it's near and dear to my heart, but we're working pretty heavily on device and application intelligence. If I've said that so many times, it's because it is what allows us to identify what you need and where you're going, right? And so if I can identify the capabilities in the home of the different devices, I might be able to modify your network or adapt your network in order to deliver the best experience. In our MDU offering, if I can understand what's going on in your building from the Wi-Fi you have here versus the Wi-Fi in the next unit, I can not fight against each other. So we're not playing the game of just turning up the stereo. This is all about context. If I can understand the applications that you're running, again, from an anonymized perspective, I can allow you to tune your experience and that of your household towards what you want and what you don't want. Now, I don't want to get in the position of the arguments between who should be gaming and who should be doing their work calls, but obviously that's very important. Part of what we do from an application intelligence perspective is we do look at the applications. We do it on the edge, so this is very important. We do it on the CPE so that it remains there, that information is there and anonymized, not giving details back to us, but allowing you that capability to tune your network. If I go back to devices, when I say device intelligence, again, this is in the context of the complexity of devices that you keep bringing in your home and forcing the ISP to have to manage and support. I don't want to deliver a quality of experience score across your household that takes into account the LG dishwasher that has Wi-Fi connectivity, and it's on the edge of the network, and it always shows up as potentially low signal, and it's doing just fine. So it's very important for us to recognize not just what device you have in general, but also the characteristics, the fingerprint of that device, the problems that device might actually cause on your network, as I mentioned, to the inexpensive doll that you bring home that has some sort of a wireless connected IoT in there, and it's causing a problem across the household. So as we start to understand those devices, the complexity of the devices interacting with each other, as we know, I've been in mobile space as well as Wi-Fi being unlicensed. We always have to work on backward compatibility. That brings its own issues. And so we need to be aware of everything that's going on so that we can dynamically tune the home really to optimize. And at Plume, I love the quality of experience and I love the customer experience term, but you can also have a negative experience. So we're working really towards what we call subscriber confidence. So I don't want you to have to call. I don't want you to experience an issue. I want to try to do that as dynamically as possible. I just want to make Wi-Fi go away. You walk in your home, you're happy, you're able to connect and use and do the things that you need to do.
Yeah, fantastic. Andrew, I don't know if you have anything to add there on what really context means here in the broadband experience and what maybe you're counseling and working with folks in the industry to think about how it changes real-time decision making or different things that ISPs can know. And then DJ is going to share, I think, some specific applications of how you think about context really for broadband.
Sure. So just echoing a point that James made, which I think is really crucial, the subscriber wants the network to be invisible. Like, they have no desire to sit there and fine tune it, and they want the highest fidelity experience they can get. So I think when we look at where there are opportunities to create value. It is solving the pain points, but if I take a step back and I look at the context of the user today from a macro perspective, you also have to look at the inflationary environment, how that's stoked affordability issues. Pricing is different all around the world for broadband, and in some parts of the world, I would argue it seems very affordable, right? If you're looking at it in the United States, for many cohorts, it's not terribly affordable. It's actually something they have to think long and hard about. It's a long-term commitment. And when you're in that kind of a space with a variety of segments that you're trying to serve, I think it's really important to not just solve a known pain point for how connectivity didn't work so well last year versus how you're going to make it a little bit better this year, a little bit more seamless this year. I think it's also important to provide new levels of utility and create emotional upside, surprise and delight, right? We used to hear that a lot in CPG and in other areas of consumer. Nobody really wants to talk about it in the telco or the ISP space because surprise and delight is really hard, right? It's just like, what can I show someone that I haven't already, talked about in my earnings call or, on stage at CES? What can I show someone that really changes how they view their internet? And I think, one of your earlier points was, how do you avoid the race to the bottom? How do you avoid commoditization? You have to move into that surprise and delight. You have to give users and subscribers things that they don't anticipate. So an example I love to talk about, and I actually got this from watching somebody demo our software and watching some of the inputs that they put in. And then, it was nothing proprietary, but one of the topics, and then I went and used the software myself to sort of explore this area. If you think about personalization, I know this is a back-end billing nightmare. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of hate texts from friends of mine that work in the backside of that work in back office and a lot of the ISPs. But if you could create custom bundles, if you could deal with the streaming fatigue, streaming subscription fatigue, and allow people to craft exactly what they wanted, give them exactly that and build them for exactly that. And if you could have the relationships with your ecosystem partners on the media side that allowed you to do that, you'd be creating a lot of utility, right? You'd be giving the user exactly what they want, nothing more and no extra noise. But then if you go a layer deeper, you can say, well, okay, if I want to do personalization, why is my discovery algorithm a black box to you where the only things that change it are what you watched last week or over the last years, or whether you give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Why don't I give you agency as a user into how you think about how discovery could work? What would you want to weight, the various variables at in the dashboard that you might create? So I think this goes back to creating that emotional attachment with the user and trying to give them things that give them agency and power over their home and over the experiences that they have when they're in the home, and then obviously on mobile as they move out of the home. So I think we're all kind of talking about these same things, and there's so much opportunity here. It's sort of a shame that we're not already there yet because we're all users, and I know we want a lot of these things, but it is challenging, and I think there's a lot of opportunity here to do some really great work. And I think Adeia is doing some great stuff in IP development around some various things that touch on these things. I don't know, DJ, if you want to add anything to that.
Sure. I love your framing, Anju, surprise and delight. I know service providers would want to surprise and delight. I think the big challenge there is that it is a capital intensive business, and a lot of service providers are finding it hard to transition from that capital intensive mindset to a more software oriented, more nimble mindset. And I think that has been the challenge. And on top of that, there's the double whammy of disaggregation, becoming more and more of the dump pipe, bearing the costs of transport and carriage, while the internet applications actually take all the value out of surprise and delight. So I think those are definitely the challenges for telcos today. But let me bring it back to what context means here for me. So I did a slide or two on that, and this is how basically you can get that inconvenience removed, that seamlessness going. And to your point, as you said, Anju, the customer never wants to worry about this. But essentially, the way I look at it, context is two types. The first is the most important type of context. That's the user context. That's the one that improves those user experiences. It could be related to the applications. It could be related to the device. It could be related to where you're at, location-based, things like that. But then the other part of this context, which a service provider cannot ignore, is their strategic intent, their business context. And that is important too, as they're constantly having to pump in capital and evolve their networks, right? And so they can make decisions that are not long-standing, right? And so this kind of context does drive decisions such as, I have multiple CDNs today. Everybody has multi-CDN architecture today. How am I going to utilize that? How am I, if I have multiple access networks, how I'm going to split or steer traffic across those? And so at the end of the day, I mean, it's really about, trying to make the customer as satisfied as possible while also balancing my own network costs, how best I can utilize my network or my disparate networks efficiently, right? And user context does come through more and more today in the various applications, whether it is NAS, network APIs, other descriptors in traffic, or some inferencing that can be done in the cloud about traffic. So I think it's going to be a little bit more about how you can inference and how you can apply the right context. Here's just a non-exhaustive list of examples, of things like user context. One of my favorite topics when I was talking about L4S, when I was talking about IETF adoption, I'd love to see standards like L4S become more and more prevalent. It does require the service provider to engage, and so companies like Comcast have already engaged, so have T-Mobile, and we're looking to see more and more service providers engage in those kind of things. Then there's, of course, Wi-Fi sensing, joint sensing and communication, which has come as a new paradigm. Network as a service, can I provide to another application provider certain services which they can then use, to prevent fraud or whatever else, simple troubleshooting, so on and so forth, of their own services. And then, of course, like I talked about, network and business context, traffic classification, network monitoring, self-healing, providing better customer service. These are just simple examples of network and business context. And with your permission, Jennifer, I'd like to share one more thought. This is definitely an R&D thought, but this is an example of the kind of work that we do at Adeia. And so, for example, if you listen to Spotify and you walk out of your home every single day, and you don't have all your playlists queued up, all stored beforehand, every single time when you walk away from your home and you need to switch from Wi-Fi to cellular, there's going to be that period where you're like, nothing's happening, right? And so it's a documented problem which occurs because of stickiness to Wi-Fi, or essentially Wi-Fi first sort of methodology that is used in devices. So here's an example of some R&D we did where you could use, for example, the CSI matrix, the channel state information matrix, which helps to create location fingerprints, and you could start identifying egress zones. And then if you identify that, for example, a user is in an egress zone, you can also identify their direction of movement, again, from the CSI matrix or using some sort of inertial measurement, which is available to you from your mobile device. And then you can start verifying that they're actually moving out of that egress zone. Then you can actually infer their intent. And their intent, let's say, is to leave the home premises. So in this case, you can, in some cases, just force the Wi-Fi connection to terminate and immediately force it into cellular, or you can apply traffic splitting, switching, steering to quickly force that connection onto cellular. And so then this poor user experience duration dramatically reduces or basically gets removed, right? So this is just an example of the stuff we do in R&D.
Yeah, I love this example of taking that understanding of location in the home to take that little pain point away. Also, I know you do some work in vehicles as well, and there's that same kind of issue, not just changing from the home network over to mobile, but then also into the vehicle, and sometimes picking up the home network still, and right? There's all of these decisions that need to happen, but with more understanding of where I am and where I'm going, and am I in the car, out the car, or around the house? All of that can be much smoother. James, go ahead.
Thanks, DJ. I want to say you're my hero for working on this. Obviously, having spent a lot of time building out the Xfinity Wi-Fi network, we caused some of these problems for a lot of people back in the day, and then bringing on the MVNO solutions caused a little bit more. And then, if you remember, around 2022, everybody was working on CBRS. Now you've got 3 switches going on. So this has been an extraordinary challenge. I really appreciate the effort and working on resolving this problem, and does everybody else.
Awesome.
Appreciate
okay, well,
the
we do.
vote of confidence there.
Good, DJ.
No, I said I appreciate that vote of confidence from James.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are getting some questions in, so I wanted to take one of these questions here, and then we might go to a polling question to the audience. And maybe I'll go to James first here on this, and then if anybody else wants to chime in, really on the parameters to help understand quality of experience. So the question is speed, delay, and sometimes jitter are the parameters used to monitor the quality of service of the connection. Can you comment on models, techniques, enhanced set of networking parameters that are necessary to assess quality of experience, especially moving from kind of speed tests to really enhanced application-aware quality of experience scores, right? What should we be looking at? So James, I'll start with you there.
Perfect. I appreciate it. This has been something I've been thinking about as well for 15 years, and I'm not the first. So I would call those very critical, those 3 items that you just mentioned, speed, latency, jitter. Those have been near and dear to all of our hearts in terms of focusing on those issues. But it's a much more advanced question, right? So this gets to, are you using a banking app right now? If so, if I change your IP address, that's going to be a problem. But if I have low or if I have pretty extensive latency, that's not an issue. If I'm working on buffered video, say YouTube, then I have the capability of enjoying my video regardless of various breaks in service and so forth. So that's not an issue. But if I'm doing real-time streaming, or we're doing a live event like this, then you need like pure connectivity the entire time. And so it's far beyond just understanding speed, latency, and jitter. We get into where are you moving? What are you going to connect to next? How are you using this? What devices, and so forth. And so I would say our breadth of parameters that we look at now are quite extensive. I don't want to go into, I could speak for about another 2 hours on artificial intelligence and machine learning. If you ask me about models very quickly, I'll just say this isn't really an application for generative AI, even though I think everybody loves to say these large language models can solve complex mathematical problems, but in many cases they can't. So we are working on, at Plume, we're actually significantly investing into our machine learning labs. That's going to be doing our device intelligence, application intelligence, and doing real-time predictive auto resolution. Adapt has been a key part of our profile and products for a long time. A lot of people don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but every second we're attempting to look at your network and identify and adapt to those capabilities. And then again, from what model we're looking at, most of these are going to be unique challenges. Some may even be proprietary that we're trying to move into standards space. DJ and Anju, I'd love to hear more from you guys about standards. But from a Plume perspective, we look across a number of those. We do a lot of regressions in-house. We do a lot of ML, and we try to find out exactly how to adapt and tune. And we know we can do quite a bit better. And so we're building out our teams even more and investing heavier into machine learning to be able to do that as fast as possible.
That's perfect, because we're diving right into talking about intelligence and AI applications here. Andrew or DJ, did you have any follow-ups to this quality of experience, particularly kind of point and ensuring that as we move into application aware, new parameters to be looking at?
I'm going to echo a point that James made that I think is often lost about generative AI and the power of LLMs versus their approach at Plume to what they're doing, which I completely agree with James. LLMs, largely you're going to get probabilistic outcomes. You don't want that for a lot of precision analysis. You really want to use generative AI for broader applications, and we've used it in a variety of different ways. But I think some of the things that James talks about is exactly the right direction you want to be going in. If you're looking at all of these different things behaviorally around what is a user doing, what is a user trying to accomplish, and you have this, I'm going to use the word loosely, topography of all of the different things that are happening around them. I think you get a much bigger picture of how do you fine tune that experience for them, and you have to do it dynamically, which means you can't really give them too much agency in this. However, I would love to see a little more ability for the user to maybe prioritize. And I know we're in a world where net neutrality regs differ from state to state, and some are more stringent than others. But within the world of Wi-Fi and inside the home, I think users having more agency around how they do prioritization can solve for some of that, but you still need to do exactly the stuff that I think James was talking about. So I thought that was great.
TJ, anything
On
to
my
add?
side, definitely echo everything that James and Anju have said. I think from a pure parameter standpoint, I definitely say, we work on video a lot. So things like frame rate, definitely very, very important to us. When it comes to AI, token throughput, extremely important. It really depends on the context,
Yep.
right? So, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, let's talk a little bit more specifically then about AI. Like you said, there are appropriate applications of LLMs. There are not. Generative AI. What are the applications that you see as real and sustainable, and opportunity to be successful with the broadband experience? Andrew, I'd love to start with you there, and then go back to James.
Sure. I think one of the applications, so if you think about the world of fraud detection, I think a lot of really interesting work has happened with companies like Endstream working with telcos to sort of understand, who's sitting behind the modem, what's happening, is this really is this person who they say they are they where they should be? And Endstream is doing some other interesting things in that space. I'd love to see ISPs move more into fraud prevention from the user's point of view, where you're informing the user how you've protected and safeguarded them, where you can give them tangible proof points for what you've done to defend them and really build value there. But I do think that Microsoft in the last few years talked about a few interesting use cases where they could use generative AI to understand whether or not somebody was being scammed, because that's largely a text-based interaction. It's either on text or it's voice. But you can sort of dissect that and say, does this seem like a human? Does this seem like it's AI? I think that's one of the interesting examples. I think there's a lot in customer support that has been happening. Some of that has been good. Some of that, I would say, the execution has been kind of all over the place as well. You need to by the time somebody's escalated and they've gone to customer support in this industry in particular, in my opinion, it's already bad. So by the time they're at customer support, if you don't let them leave with what feels like a win, it's probably going to hurt you in some way or another. You have to give them some kind of a win. It doesn't have to be the win that they think they're going to get, but you have to make them feel good. And I think sometimes AI accelerates the process of getting to the outcome, and that is somewhat of a win, but sometimes it accelerates getting to an outcome that has nothing to do with what the resolution was about, and that's a big loss from a consumer, and it's disappointing. So I think it really depends on execution when it comes to a lot of the generative AI implementations and general AI use case pursuit.
And I can share a quick point of feedback from what we're seeing in our research on AI, and James loves to go to next, and DJ. We've been testing a lot consumers' perception and awareness, understanding of generative AI in particular over the past year, and different use cases about the network, about the home, about the entertainment that they interact with. And it's pretty clear that what they're comfortable with and actually value right now, number one, is have AI help me protect me from AI, right? Help me detect what's fake and what's real. I don't know what's fake and what's real anymore. So the scams, cybersecurity, data protection, deep fake, I value AI if it's helping me and assisting me. And then actually technical support. There's a lot of openness there. Most people don't want to have to get on the phone. They're going to try YouTube first. They're going to try, Reddit. They're going to try all these different ways to self-service. So there's some openness to using AI and chatbots to help them self-service better. But you're right that there's a lot of nuance to that, and how you do it right as opposed to turn consumers off. James, to you, and then DJ.
I appreciate it.
Applications AI. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I want to first say, Anju, I appreciate you saying probabilistic. It makes me chuckle a little bit, but I've been going around for a couple of years saying, I wish people understood the difference between stochastic systems, probabilistic systems, outcomes, and so forth. But you hit the nail on the head in terms of, I find it to be a little bit less model specific. So if we go to generative AI, if we're looking at the leading models and the capabilities, you're exactly right in their capabilities. They have a great space, I believe, in customer care with, I think, a lot of carefulness, taking care in the way that you apply it. We're seeing it to be less great at perfect digital containment by understanding exactly what the intent is and then driving towards a path of resolution. But we are finding that in the back end using AI, if I can determine that cause and effect happened or that condition and outcome happened, I may now be able to, in the back end, architect that into my platforms, into our adapt algorithms, and go just solve that problem for you. I don't even want you to have to deal with it. We're going to apply that across the board to all of our customers. So back to generative AI, when I talk about customer care, as you mentioned, Anju, it's very, very good at human language since it was built on language. Where we're working right now in this space is working and collaborating with the CSR, the care agent, enabling them in their capabilities. It's not just forcing some low-grade chatbot on an unsuspecting victim called your subscriber. Instead, we're really trying to enable the care agent to be better, faster, and drive down that average handling time.
Fantastic. Those are really interesting examples. And DJ, I'd love to, we have just a few minutes here, but you guys always have so much interesting that's going on in R&D. So share with us an example of, again, kind of applications of intelligence here that you guys are working on.
Will do, Jennifer. But to your example, I'd definitely like to say I use the Gen Alpha test, which is to ask my middle schooler, is this real or is this fake? But outside of that, we do have some research in deepfake detection as well. So what I want to present here is another feature in the R&D, which is around how do you optimize across multiple services for QoE inside of the premises. What I'd like to say is, and this applies broadly to the field of AI, is that basically service providers, through their CPE, their customer premises equipment, actually have a beachhead in the home. And it is really up to the service provider. It's an opportunity to be able to use that beachhead for AI and inferencing. How that will evolve depends a little bit on the business models. It depends a little bit on what the capabilities and whether those capabilities can be ramped up from where they stand today for service providers. But here's an example of if you actually had that capability, what all you could do. So in this example, you have multiple services. They can be from the same service provider, or they can actually be untrusted, like a connected home service could come from somebody else, while your broadband service is coming from somebody else. And so the way you architect this is you maintain two things. One is your smart ledger, of all the events that are occurring in the home. Think of this as your typical blockchain. And the other is basically a message broker system, a pub subsystem on your embedded device in the home. And now you can actually dramatically make new functionality appear. For example, and I take this example just as a visual, is like, if your programming is interrupted, why is it interrupted, right? Is your Wi-Fi signal poor? Is your WAN side disconnected? Was there a billing issue? So these are examples of, if you had topics to which, different devices or applications could publish to, and other devices and applications could subscribe to, then you can architect basically better troubleshooting. Not just that, you can also architect better, more adaptive policy implementation. To take another example, suppose if you had a broadband outage and you basically moved to a cellular hotspot or something in the home, right? Or and then all of a sudden, bandwidth is a little bit more precious. For example, if you're an MVNO and now you are paying per bit cost for all of that traffic that's coming into the home, then you would want that kind of an event to be published by the message broker system so that a set-top box could say, hey, I want to reduce my resolution and in the process reduce my bandwidth. So these are just simple examples of how we can ensure that different services that are maybe untrusted can actually work to optimize for the consumer and for themselves as well.
So love these examples. Thank you all so much for the conversation. We're just about at time, so I'd love to wrap with a final quick lightning round thought. So like 3 sentences or less from each of you. I'll go James, Andrew, and then DJ, you can wrap us up. If you had a piece of advice for organizations that are preparing to deploy or trying to better understand how network and household context can help them differentiate their services beyond speed, right? What's your advice for these organizations as they're looking to evaluate those options, now? So quick wrap up words. We'll go quick around the horn here. James, starting with you. What should organizations be doing?
Appreciate it. I appreciate you bringing it back, and I'm going to take it back to the beginning. I mentioned the how, the when, the why, and the what. Understanding everything beyond just connectivity is extremely important. Pardon me. Recognizing the capabilities and desires of what people want to use, what they're using it on, what they're attempting to do from a connectivity perspective, from an entertainment perspective, from a work perspective. Those looking across the board beyond just the standard latency and jitter, I think are critical.
Okay, Andrew, do you?
Well, you should use our design thinker module and try to figure out what the future holds and what you might want to invest in and investigate. But okay, promo aside, I think it's really important to look at various groups, disparate groups of power users, project what their needs are and the kinds of things that they're trying to do on the network further out, and then also look at the context of the network. What is happening in the home? We didn't get into power generation. It's an adjacent space. I think I've had an increasingly difficult time detangling from ISPs. I think it needs to be something that is more interwoven in how ISPs think about the future. And that's, again, part of the broader context. You start with the nexus of the user. You start with projecting out where they're going to go. You look at the nexus of their environment, project that out where it's going to go. And then you slowly start to understand where are things going to break and how do you get ahead of that? And then how do you provide that surprise and delight on top of it by preparing users for that?
Fantastic. DJ, last word, your words of advice for organizations really trying to plan for and prepare to bring more context into their operations and services.
Sure. I mean, this entire talk was about context-driven connectivity. So I'd say start with the simple things, remove the pain points, adopt a more software-centric methodology, a more nimble methodology, and improve the customer relationship. The customer shouldn't be calling you only when their broadband is out or their mobile service is interrupted.
I love it. That wraps it up perfectly. I really appreciate all of your participation and, of course, your insights and your great experience that you've shared with everyone today. Appreciate Adeia for your partnership and your support here for this conversation today. Thank you all so much. Have a lovely day, and looking forward to speaking more about this topic with you all soon.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.